This is Lewis Hart for the Ring Magazine. Delighted today to be joined with Ben Shalom here on a nice Tuesday night, just after wrapping up the press conference with Natasha Jonas against Lauren Price. Massive fight, big build up. But before we do get into that, how's things? How are you, mate?
I'm very well. Very happy after today, and good to be back in the swing of things. How are you?
All good, mate. All the better for speak to you. Obviously, you've had your first show now. 2025 is up and running. But yeah, obviously, you got February the 1st, but a big build-up for March 7th. Royal Albert Hall, all-women's card. Especially on days like today, it has that fight, that feeling that you're into something special, and I'm sure it'll get bigger and bigger as the weeks go on.
Yeah, look, the numbers today, the media attention, outside of your traditional boxing media attention was enormous. And that's when you've got a big fight. You've got two names that have achieved a lot in the sport, big names outside of boxing as well, given what they've achieved. But it's a great fight, and it's the best v the best, and it's an all-British fight, probably the biggest female British fight ever. And to be at the Royal Albert Hall as well, which we've been working on for so long. It's really, really satisfying to get it over the line. The card's going to be insane. The talent on show. You're talking every Olympics since 2012. Some unbelievable talent, and but yeah, nearly sold out now. It will be something very special. A lot being planned on Fight Week.
I guess when you look at it now from a promotion point of view, and I guess from a business point of view for yourself, Ben, and you look at obviously the fights are amazing, but you look at the event putting on and the show that you put on. How special is that? How important is that all them connotations and all them sort of extra add-ons come with it? Regardless of the fight, I'm sure it feels special when you've got such a big event and a big show being put on like that.
Definitely. Look, for me, women's boxing is necessary for boxing. I know there's people that will say there's detractors, but boxing needs women's boxing to grow, to be perceived differently, to get the right sponsors in, to get the right broadcasters in, not to mention it's entertaining, not to mention the fighters will fight anyone, not to mention the numbers it does. Because you compare many sports and they don't add up. And thank you to Sky Sports, because they're massive supporters of women's boxing, and they support us really well when it comes to it. And we believe we have the biggest stable, the best stable in women's boxing. We believe we can put on another historic night. The night at the O2 2 years ago was something that probably a highlight of my career, and something that has a real impact in the sport. And yeah, people might say X, Y, and Z, but this is a sport now standing on its own 2 feet, delivering its own numbers, selling out venues, selling out sponsors, getting sponsors in, and then the talent coming through, the Caroline Dubois, the Lauren Prices, the Karis Artisors, the Cindy Ngambas, Fran Hennessy. You've got real talent coming through, and that's what's big for the sport. Because when Savannah and Katie and Natasha were at the top, there wasn't that depth, there wasn't those big fights. And even look at the welterweight division now. For me, it's the best against the best with Lauren and Natasha, but there's so many fights in and around that division that can be made, and I think we can enter glory years for women's boxing. Last year was amazing for men's boxing, and it still will be this year, but I think our job is to make sure that the female sport thrives, because we owe it to British boxing, we owe it to the fighters. There's that many fighters that need those opportunities, and you have to have that in the back of your mind.
Definitely, and one thing I think that was special and a big thing, especially today, obviously you see Rob McCracken there, and you talk about how much women's boxing's come on. And I interviewed Rob after, and he said, that he's got almost everyone on the card he knows. Caroline, Lauren, Natasha, Cindy, Savannah, Raven, honestly, literally everyone, Karis as well, everyone on the card. So when you look at sort of how much it's developed, and how much, I guess even someone like Rob has been a catalyst to that, it's special to see something like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, and look, it just shows how important the Olympics have been. It's since 2012, I think Natasha Jonas, Katie Taylor, I think Savannah Marshall. I know she went to Rio as well. But that was the first year for female boxing in the Olympics, and it's no coincidence that was the first professional stars. It's been everything. It's been the catalyst. It's been everything for women's boxing, and it's creating star after star after star. And now you're seeing girls in the gyms. Now you're seeing girls not going down that route. Fran Hennessy never went to GB. She's a pro at 20 years old. And so I think it is the Olympic effect. Rob McCracken has done unbelievable things, and as you said, pretty much knows and been through everyone on the card, still involved with a lot of them, and has created some stars. So, we have to be grateful as a sport to him, to the Olympics, for making female boxing a sport within the Olympics, and it's had such a major effect on the professional sport since Caroline de Boer, 24 years old. You used to turn over at 30, 31. You look at when Katie Taylor and Savannah and Natasha turned over, it's much later in their career. So the sport's evolving, the sport's changing, the sport's getting bigger, the sport's in an amazing place, and March the 7th will be special.
Actually, just wanted to add there, I know they weren't announced there, but Fran Hennessy and Savannah Marshall were there today, and I was hearing of a few other fights as well. Is the undercard fully done there, or will we see them added?
We'll see them be added. Sky wanted to wait until their opponents were locked in. Sometimes that can affect negotiation. Suddenly it's a different prize to what it was yesterday. Savannah spearheaded, for me, our company in women's boxing. Natasha as well. Savannah, the nights in Newcastle, the build, the selling out of Newcastle, the O2, the breaking women's viewing figure records. That show, Shields Marshall, still was the highest ever women's sporting event on Sky across every sport, and Savannah Marshall helped create that. She spent a bit of time in mixed martial arts. She's coming back. There's obviously a big fight on her mind, but we want to see a big fight on March the 7th as well, and that's what we're working towards. Fran Hennessy, the same. We want her in the big fights.
Yeah. Absolutely. Moving on, before I do touch on obviously the big topic being Eubank Ben, did want to touch on Isaac Chamberlain, Viddal Riley. Obviously that fight is off now. A lot of sort of claims from Viddal Riley. Not really buying the injury too much. I guess what can you say on the latest of that?
Frustrating. You put a lot of work into a fight. The press conferences, the build up, that was a genuine rivalry that's been brewing for nearly a year. Viddal got injured. We had to make it at the start of this year. Yeah, gutted because it's a huge fight. Gutted for Viddal. He's right in the sense we haven't received evidence, but I'm sure we will. I've worked with Isaac a long time, and he's taken fights on short notice. He's taken any fight, and he never pulls out, and he's a warrior. So you know there's an issue. Gutted. It didn't seem there was something necessarily right at the press conference. It wasn't Isaac's usual self, but clearly something's happened. And gutted for Viddal, but we've got some big things lined up.
I was going to say, what is the latest? I guess is there any more additions on that card? What is the deal there?
I believe Callum Simpson is being announced on that card to keep his momentum going. Scott Forrest is in a big fight on the card, and Viddal will be announced in the...
Scott Forrest fighting Viddal?
No, Scott Forrest in a fight of his own, but that's a fight for down the line, 100%. But we've got a big announcement for Viddal coming soon.
Brilliant. Let's touch on the main talking point. Eubank Jr versus Ben announced. I know, I'll ask you. I'll say April 26th. You will deny that because it's not been fully confirmed yet, and neither is Tottenham Hotspur. But that is obviously what is getting worked towards. But big fight. All but waiting for the announcement now. So you must be buzzing to have it over the line. Yeah,
obviously delighted. It's still not been officially announced in terms of the date and the venue, but the fact that the fight's there, it's been a marathon. It hasn't been easy at times, and His Excellency helped smooth everything over and get it over the line and made things viable. And you have to appreciate that and be humble enough to know how much assistance he probably gave to the final points. I think that fight's too big not to happen, but to get it done swiftly, to stop the split arguments, to stop the rehydration arguments, to stop every argument under the sun you wouldn't believe, it helped a lot. And we now have one of the biggest nights in British boxing, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
I did actually want to touch on there, and it was a question I actually wanted to ask Hearn as well, but there was obviously an argument about the splits of who deserves 55, 45%. I done an interview with Eddie Hearn on Friday, and he said to me, Turkey and His Excellency was dealing directly with the fighters and with the promoters. If that was the case, then why was there an argument over splits if there's like if you're dealing directly and there's not like what was the case there?
Well, when the fight first was getting discussed, you're looking at it in the traditional way. How much money is this fight going to generate? And that could have gone on forever. For us to do our separate deals, it means I don't know what they've done.
Yeah, of course.
They don't know what we've done. It stops the jealousy, it stops the ego, and it stops all that. And so everyone's happy with their deal. And now we have a big fight. As I say, maybe it would have been resolved, but would it have been more painful? Would it have affected the promotion? Would it have taken longer? Who knows? But it got there in the end, and everyone's very, very happy. And as I say, it's an absolute huge fight.
One thing about the fight is obviously a big talking point there being a rehydration clause for Eubank Jr. Where do you stand on this on the rehydration clause? Maybe you can reveal what the weigh-in is on the Saturday. What is the deal and what is your opinion of having the rehydration clause?
I don't agree with rehydration clauses usually. I think it was wrong to be raised at the last minute. There was a lot of controversy around that in the first fight. We felt it was time to leave that alone. However, it's at a completely different weight till it was the first time. And when you speak to the nutritionists and you speak to everyone, this isn't going to affect us. And it isn't going to affect us. They might think they've won. They should not, for me, shouldn't be asking it for it. Don't think, as I say, it's in the spirit of boxing and this, but the number that's been agreed to is absolutely no problem, so it's not going to make a difference, and Chris Eubank is going to be his normal self, and I think it's going to be destructive.
Yeah, because I guess a counteracting argument to a rehydration clause would be, and when I spoke to Eddie Hearn, he mentioned this, and he said, look, Conor's the one that's coming up in 2 weights, so he's the one that would be undersized in a sense, so that's their point of putting a rehydration clause in, which obviously is their favour. So, do you understand that point? If you are the guy who's at more disadvantage, the guy having the rehydration clause or the guy coming up 2 weights?
Listen, ask any boxer that we deal with, what's the worst thing about being a boxer? Making weight. It's horrible. It clearly impacts performance. And the last thing you want is a rehydration clause. It's a lot safer to put on weight than to take off weight. This is a weight that we're comfortable at. This is the 160 weight that we made in Saudi Arabia. So weight is fine. Rehydration, the number, is not going to cause a problem. I don't agree with it as a principle, but this number's not going to cause a problem. And then it's just about ego, because, I think even in normal circumstances, this number isn't something that we would probably go beyond, regardless. So it's not like it's impacting us, but definitely for me, it's more of a disadvantage to have to lose weight than put on weight. Whatever way you cut it up, it's going to be destructive. And Chris Eubank Jr. for me is a clear favourite, and he's going to take him out early.
Absolutely. Ben, there was something I did want to get your reaction to. Tom Kershaw in the Times wrote a piece about some insiders at Sky or someone at Sky not being too keen on broadcasting Eubank Ben because of the Chris Eubank Jr.'s links to Mazar Majid, who's obviously previously been spoken about with Joshua Boatsi and Khan and Brook. Where do we stand at the moment with this? Is this a potential hiccup for the fight? What is the latest on that situation?
Look, I think the article listed various reasons. But we've not even announced the date and location, so broadcasters consider everything all the time about any sport, about anything. It's a huge fight, and I expect the biggest broadcasters to be involved. That's all I can say. I think it's almost a non-story. Okay. Boxing has always had fighters, perhaps that have failed drug tests in the past, unfortunately, has always had managers potentially in the sport that have a past as well. But it's a past, and this is about Eubank Ben. This isn't about a fighter that's not been licensed that is licensed now. I'm not the broadcaster, and whatever the broadcasters decide is for them. But I think it's a non-story. How long away? We're 3 or 4 months away from the event. I doubt it's even in like real discussion points. We've got a date and a venue to announce. We've got an undercard to announce, and we've got one of the biggest fights in British boxing history. So let's deal with that. And as I say, I think Johnny Nelson said today, it's such a big fight that you're gonna get the biggest broadcasters wanting to be involved, and for me, Sky Sports is the biggest.
Yeah, I was going to say, with that, is it weird to see, because Mazol's involvement, he's been involved in obviously many fights that have been put on Sky. Look, Carnbrook was one that he was involved in, that's on record. He obviously has involvement with Joshua Boatzy, and look, they've had fights with Dan Aziz, and obviously they've broadcasted fights like the Willie Hutchinson fight. So is it like a bit strange to see, considering like why draw the line now when they could have drawn the line, look, however long ago?
Yeah, I think, look, there's various reasons as to why it was. I think there were many fights before our time that certain people were involved in, way before our time, way before I think I even had a promoter's license. And so, yeah, it's not a decision. It's not anything to do with myself. But I also think sometimes we like to create a story and like to make a story and create something out of that. So I think this fight is enormous, and as you said, I just can't imagine a fight of this size not being chased for by everyone. It's going to be an amazing night for British boxing. I saw it in the House of Commons.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Big up Chris Webb.
Yeah, unbelievable. But also just everyone in the street. Yeah. It's all people have been asking me about for 3 months, and the British fights, it's going to be a fully British card on both sides. But yeah, it seems. I think let's look forward to the fight, and I think that will work itself out.
Well, you spoke about the card there, and Tris Dixon from Boxing Scene, he reported Liam Smith against Aaron McKenna, Viddal Riley against Chev Clark, and Adam Azim against TBA. Is there anything you can tell me about potential undercard? Is there any truth to that? Is that, well, if you mentioned about Viddal, potential opponent, would the aim now be April 26th against Chev Clark?
There's some big fights, there's some big British fights, there's some big British fights involving our lads. Let's see what gets announced. I want to announce it as a team. We've done extremely well to get this far without falling out with each other. I'm not going to prepare to fall out now. It's not a Riyadh season card. It's different. It's going to be British. It's Ring Magazine. And it's going to be like an old school. Look, they've got amazing plans, but those old school British pay-per-views that were so big in this country. Eubank and Ben are like throwbacks in terms of the characters, the proper characters, and that is what this night is going to be. It's a night for British culture. It's a night for every generation. It's a night for British fights and the best of British. And I love boxing all around the world, and I love the big fights being made in Riyadh. You could never make them. But I also love a huge British affair, and that's why boxing is best in this. This country produces all for me, my favourite fighters at the moment, and it's going to be a very special night with a very good undercard.
Last few from myself. Gareth A. Davis said on the Fight Night Live on TalkSport, he said about Turkey, he's hearing that they want to get the dads involved. We know the dads of Eubank and Ben. We obviously know about Conor's got a good relationship with Nigel Jr, not so much with Senior. But is there anything I guess you can tell us of any potential plans for that?
Not really. Obviously, they're a huge feature of the story, but sometimes people forget there are things outside of boxing, and there have been difficult things in people's lives, in their personal lives, and those things are more important than boxing. Of course, it would be iconic to see everyone there, and it would be a very special time for sport, and sport will stand still at that moment. But there's not an issue for any of us, and boxing is less important than other things in life.
Final one from myself. Martin Bakole, FA Jagba, announced for May the 2nd, obviously on the undercard of Ryan Garcia, and Rolly Romero and Devin Haney and Jose Ramirez. Massive fight for Martin Bakole, IBF Eliminator. I know Billy Nelson always has a lot to say about potentially having a shot at Daniel Dubois, but it's within touching distance now and something you must be buzzing for.
One fight away from disrupting the whole division. The status quo, the promoters. One fight away. I'm just delighted. Thank you again to His Excellency. He promised me support. Trying to get someone to get in the ring with Martin Bakole is an expensive process. I can genuinely think in the time that I've been with Martin, 7 or 8 names that have pulled out that we thought were about to sign. So I was convinced this fight doesn't get signed. We managed to get it signed. We managed to get a deal done with Top Rank, thanks to Brad Jacobs for getting that over the line quickly. And now Martin is one fight away. And look, I don't want to speak down on FA Jagba. Credit to him. He's taken, for me, the hardest fight in boxing possibly. And it's a great fight. But the IBF make sure that their mandatories happen. And Martin Bakole is one fight away from fighting for a heavyweight world title. Once he gets his hands on a world title, it's game over.
Nicely way to put it. Ben, always a pleasure taking time to speak to me. Always appreciate catching up. And I'm sure it won't be too long before we're catching up again, mate. Really appreciate it. Thank you.